Ethan Vale stood alone at the edge of his farm, staring across the wide fields that usually rolled with healthy green crops. Today, something felt wrong. The plants were still standing, but they looked exhausted, like they had already decided to give up. The strange part was the weather. The sun had been perfect for weeks. The rivers nearby were full. Nothing about this should be happening. Ethan knelt and touched one of the wilted leaves. It crumbled slightly in his hand. "That's not normal," he murmured. A moment later, he lifted into the sky, hovering above the farmland. From above, the pattern became clearer and far more disturbing. The same thing was happening everywhere. Acres of crops slowly fading, streams shrinking, patches of earth drying out like the land itself was holding its breath. Ethan shot across the county faster than the wind, scanning fields, forests, and rivers. But the result was always the same. Wherever he went, the land weakened. Finally, he stopped above a shallow river that should have been roaring with water. Instead, it barely moved. Something underneath caught his attention. He narrowed his eyes, letting his vision cut through the mud. Roots. Hundreds of them. They were shifting beneath the soil, twisting slowly like they were watching him. Before Ethan could react, the ground below exploded open. Mud and vines burst into the air as a massive figure of living plants rose from the earth. The creature's glowing eyes locked onto him. "You do not belong here." Ethan slowly lowered himself to the ground, keeping his hands open to show he meant no harm. The massive figure made of vines, roots, and dark green moss towered over him. Every movement of the creature felt ancient, like the forest itself had decided to stand up and speak. "I'm not your enemy," Ethan said calmly. The creature's glowing eyes narrowed. Thick vines twisted around its arms like muscles tightening. "You are a disturbance," the verdant guardian replied, its voice deep and rough like grinding stone. "The land weakens when you arrive. Rivers shrink. Roots struggle to breathe." Ethan frowned. "That's impossible. I've been protecting this world." The guardian stepped closer. Grass around its feet grew wildly, then withered again within seconds. The soil cracked. "Look around you," it said. Ethan did. Fields that should have been alive were turning pale. Leaves curled inward. Even the air felt strained, like the planet itself was uncomfortable. "But why?" Ethan asked quietly. For a moment, the guardian studied him carefully, as if searching for something deeper than his words. Then it spoke again. "You wear the face of this world's protector," it said. "But the roots know the truth." Ethan's chest tightened. "You are not the one who was born here." Silence fell across the field. The wind slowed. The guardian's voice became colder. "You came from a dead world, and your heart never truly arrived with you." Ethan didn't answer right away. The wind moved slowly across the dying field, brushing against the weak crops like a quiet warning. He looked down at the soil beneath his boots, then back at the towering verdant guardian. "You're wrong," Ethan said, but his voice was softer now. The guardian shook its head. Vines along its shoulders shifted like living armor. "The roots feel everything," it said. "They feel the sun, the water, and the truth inside living things." Ethan felt a heavy pressure in his chest. "You came from another world," the guardian continued. "Your home was destroyed. This planet welcomed you, but you never truly chose it." Memories flashed through Ethan's mind. A different sky. A different sun. A world that no longer existed. "I stayed," Ethan said quietly. "I protect this planet. I save people every day." "Yes," the guardian replied. "But your spirit still stands in the ruins of your old home." Ethan clenched his fists. "That doesn't make me the enemy." The guardian stepped forward, roots pushing through the soil beneath its feet. "Your body absorbs the sun's power," it said. "But because your heart still searches for another world, that energy has nowhere to settle." Ethan felt the air around him grow tense. "You are trying too hard to belong," the guardian said. The ground trembled slightly. "And in doing so, you are draining the life of the planet itself." Ethan shook his head slowly. "That can't be true." But the ground around them was already proving otherwise. The grass near his feet had turned pale, and the river behind him had sunk lower into the mud. "I'm trying to help this world," Ethan said. "I would never hurt it." The verdant guardian watched him for a long moment, as if listening to something far deeper than his words. "Then show the planet your truth," it said. Ethan stepped forward. "If this is some kind of misunderstanding, we can fix it together." He slowly raised his hand, and placed it against the guardian's chest, where thick vines twisted around a glowing core of green light. The moment their bodies touched, reality cracked. A burst of bright blue energy exploded out from Ethan's body, spreading across the field like a shockwave. The ground trembled violently. Trees bent under the sudden surge of power. The guardian screamed. But the sound wasn't human. Its voice twisted into a harsh, ancient language that Ethan had only heard in fragments of his past. A broken, ugly version of Kryptonian spilled from the creature's mouth, like the planet itself was speaking through it. Vines snapped out of the earth, wrapping around Ethan's arms and legs. They pulled him down, slamming him into the soil. "I'm not fighting you," Ethan shouted. But the closer he tried to get, the worse the reaction became. Energy surged wildly between them, unstable and dangerous. The guardian's vines tightened. Then the earth beneath Ethan opened. and the planet dragged him underground. Crisis. The world above vanished, as Ethan was pulled deep into the earth. Roots, soil, and stone closed around him like a living tunnel. Yet strangely, he could still breathe. A dim green light began to glow through the darkness, spreading across the underground space like veins of energy. The verdant guardian stood before him again, but now it looked different, larger, older, almost endless. The roots behind it stretched in every direction, forming a vast network that pulsed with life. "This is the memory of the planet," the guardian said. Before Ethan could respond, the ground beneath him dissolved into light. Suddenly, he wasn't underground anymore. He stood beneath another sky. A sky he knew too well. His old world. The red sun hung low over broken cities. The wind carried dust across empty streets. Towers that once touched the clouds now lay shattered across the land. Ethan's breath caught. "No," he whispered. Figures appeared in the distance, people he once knew, voices he once heard every day. The home he had lost stood before him again, frozen in the moment before its destruction. "You buried this," the guardian's voice echoed through the vision. "I had to move on," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "No," the guardian replied. "You survived. But you never chose to live again." The vision shifted. Now Ethan saw himself on Earth saving lives, smiling for cameras, standing beside people who trusted him. But something was wrong. Every version of him looked distant, like a visitor. "You protect this world," the guardian said quietly, "but you have never allowed it to become your home." The visions didn't stop. Ethan stood frozen as the green consciousness of the planet continued to unfold around him. Memories flowed like rivers, one after another, showing moments he had tried to bury. His old home. Its skies. The people he had lost. He saw the final day again, the world breaking apart beneath a dying sun. Buildings collapsing. The ground tearing open. The sound of everything he ever knew disappearing at once. Ethan dropped to his knees. "I tried to move on," he whispered. But the vision changed again. Now he saw himself on Earth years later. Saving a falling plane. Lifting a bridge. Smiling for cameras beside grateful crowds. Yet something about the scenes felt hollow. He noticed the way he always stood slightly apart. The way his smile never reached his eyes. The way every celebration ended with him quietly flying away, back to the farm, back to the silence. "You survived your world," the verdant guardian's voice echoed gently. Ethan clenched his fists. "I didn't want to forget them." "You were never asked to forget." The roots around him pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. "You were asked to choose." Ethan looked up confused. "You are afraid," the guardian continued. "If you allow this world to become your home, you might lose it too." The truth hit him like gravity. All this time he had been protecting Earth. But he had never truly allowed himself to belong to it. And the planet knew it. For a long time Ethan said nothing. The endless green space around him slowly quieted. The roots stopped moving. Even the memories faded until only silence remained. Ethan stared at his hands. "All this time," he said softly. Images of the past still lingered in his mind, his old world, the red sun, the people he had loved. For years he had carried those memories like fragile glass, terrified that letting go would mean losing them forever. "I thought holding on was the only way to honor them," he admitted. The verdant guardian stood quietly nearby, its glowing eyes calm now. "You were not honoring them," it said gently. "You were living inside their shadow." Ethan closed his eyes. He finally understood. Every time he saved this world, every time people called him their hero, part of him had still been waiting to wake up somewhere else, to return to a home that no longer existed. He had never truly arrived. Slowly, Ethan stood up. "I can't bring my old world back," he said. "And carrying its ruins with me won't rebuild it." The green light around him grew warmer. "I won't forget where I came from," Ethan continued. "But I can't live there anymore." For the first time since his world was destroyed, he let the grief rise fully, without fighting it. And then, he let it go. The moment he did, something inside him finally settled. The moment Ethan released the weight he had been carrying for so long, the green world around him changed. The roots that filled the vast underground space stopped trembling. The heavy pressure in the air faded. For the first time since he arrived, the energy flowing through the planet felt calm. Balanced. The verdant guardian watched him carefully. "You have chosen," it said. Ethan looked down at his hands. The power inside him no longer felt wild or unstable. The sunlight he carried in his body moved naturally now, like it finally knew where it belonged. Above them the earth responded. Water slowly returned to the dry riverbeds. The soil softened. Weak plants lifted their leaves toward the sun again. Life was returning. The guardian stepped closer and gently pulled a small green cutting from one of its vines. It handed the piece of living plant to Ethan. A reminder, it said. Growth only happens when something is allowed to take root. Moments later, Ethan rose back through the soil and into the open sky. By the time he returned to the farm, the fields were already recovering. The wind moved through the crops like nothing had ever been wrong. That night at the dinner table, his son Milo noticed the small plant resting beside Ethan's plate. "Why is there a random plant on the table?" Milo asked. Ethan smiled quietly and looked at the tiny leaves. There's nothing wrong with watching something grow, he said. And for the first time since he arrived on this planet, Ethan Vale was finally home. Comment 1 for the next part.